Chapter 10. Aid from Afar. The sudden appearance of Scott and his vicious attack took a heavy toll on Kyber and his forces. Fighting as they fled, they tried to escape to the east. Now they're surrounded in Maryah-Denn with no way out. Red 2 standing by, all 4 lit and in the green. Welcome back to YuGiOh the Falsebound Kingdom. We can only afford to take 4 marshals. Bones probably needs a few levels. We have some of them set. Rex could probably do with a few more levels here and there, but I was going to give Weevil a bit of a break anyway. His team is doing remarkably well. He had to fight off a few more grunts. We did pick up a few new monsters in Chapter 8, but we don't really get to use them that much. Let's see, we've got Sea King Dragon, we had Giant Red Sea Snake, and Spike Seadra, all of which turn up at level 1. We don't get to find any other monsters until Chapter 13. So we've got a bit of work ahead of us, in all fairness. Slightly frustrating, but we could try out a few new monsters here and there. But I think I'll stick with this team, just because I want to get the extra levels into Bones. Just a few more, because Pegasus' team is already very solid and he has to come with us. Mokuba is doing well. Labyrinth Ruler... Well, Labyrinth... The fact that Labyrinth Tank just exists is a thing. And Marthas is still dead. I honestly don't know why we've dragged him around with us. He's kind of starting to smell a bit. And I think we wound up losing his foot somewhere along the way. But, well, if one of the zombie monsters needs a snack, we can wind up throwing Marthas to him. I don't think they'll mind. But anyway, let's get going on this particular battle. We have to fight our way out.
These are desperate times, Kyber. They've caught up and have us surrounded.
We were so close! If we don't stop them here and now, we'll never do it.
You're right, of course, but our enemy is strong and resistance will be difficult.
I've never given up, Pegasus. There is always a way out. Always! So, it looks like we have quite a few enemies surrounding us. And we're going to have to fight hard. So move... I'll move Pegasus out to intercept that team. And we should be able to handle this one pretty easily then. We are also fighting as our main adversary, Seeker, who was kind of dead when he wound up dealing with Yugi's team, unless there are more of them. Alright, so... they're not going to be strong, but their attacks will be plentiful. Now, Queen of Autumn leaves. Let me just check something. Okay, so her attack can't confuse us, but she did have blue medicine. Probably want to rain down a bit of destruction on Gazelle. And he's either Force of Fusion or Force Healing. Unfortunate. If Bakuri Box had gone next, we would have got the knockout. Still, we'll soften it up quite a bit. Because Chimera, as I remember, isn't really strong. It's probably got a bit more oomph to it. Oh, we did get the critical Bakuri Box! Very nice. That is a good surprise. So, this is a fairly tough one. Sort of a spiritual successor of sorts to the Refugees mission. Only we're the ones having to escape the crowd. But with a pretty solid team, we should be able to go all right. I'll have to try and set up the base after this, because we don't really have a lot of defenses. We need the barricades up for one thing. But this at least buys us a little more time. it could have backfired, but it turned out pretty well, all things considered. If we really pile the heat on one opponent... Whoa, critical again! So we've been pretty lucky with those. So critical hit... I don't know what the calculation rate for critical hits is in this game. Pokemon, I do know that. But otherwise... and Fire Emblem I do, but otherwise it does seem to be based on certain luck factors. And it can vary unless you wind up using things like Enchanted Javelin or Black Pendant to essentially force them. It's a little unusual, but we wind up getting good results in the end. Yeah, that figured. But there we go. We should have this fight done pretty quickly. We've got plenty more attacks, and we can just soften our enemy up easily. Bikuri Box should get the knockout. I suppose I've been pretty fortunate. I haven't actually tempted Fate in a while. Future me, don't say anything. That was embarrassing. You could just see that coming from a mile off, couldn't you? You could just see it happening. It was inevitable. It was always going to happen. Oh, this team. Oh, I need to get Mokuba in by a little bit of time. As I've mentioned, these teams get more and more annoying. So as you can see, our enemies are really starting to use fusion against us. Marvelous doesn't have its special attack just yet, so we'll probably want to lock down Wing Eagle. But basically those missions where you're sort of surrounded and have to fight your way out, depending on the circumstances, well, it's almost like a horde battle in a sense. Those were really wasted potential because the Pokemon were all really low level. But there were some cool touches in there, because depending on the hordes, you could wind up with, say, 4 Zangoose and 1 Seviper, or vice versa. This meant that you had to be very quick if you wanted to catch the rarer one, because all of the Zangoose would turn on the Seviper and beat the crap out of it, or vice versa. And basically, they'd just start attacking each other. There were grunts in certain situations you battled in horde battles, but they were so underpowered. They were hardly a threat, unless they started all using moves that lowered your stats. But it was incredibly funny if you battled, say, a horde of Geodudes and one of the Geodudes used Magnitude and wiped out its teammates. Artificial stupidity at its finest. I wish they'd focused on triple and rotation battles. That would have been really cool. But we have what we have. There was something else I was going to bring up when it came to horde battles, basically them being an underused mechanic, but I don't think there's really too much to say. I do wish there was a bit more focus on double battles in some games, and triple and rotation battles would have been fun, but you didn't really get a lot of those. Some games sort of did have their gimmicks and things like that. But at the same time, I do like the fact that you can have all these multi-way Yu-Gi-Oh! Duels. Those are lots of fun because you can wind up having some very creative interactions between decks and the way people play. I've spoken a little bit about a friend of mine who once won one of those because he cobbled up a deck from random cards in his folder and somehow made it work. Mostly because he was an absolute master of mind games and could just mess with people. One of his favourite observations was, "I may lose the battle, but I always win the war." And I think that was very accurate, because he's just so good at coming up with decks that don't seem like much across a range of card games. They don't seem like much, but they are so creative, so different. I don't know how it would go in the metagame, but under normal circumstances, he's an incredibly good player. Just match him in casual games and he can come up with all sorts of shenanigans that will just leave you bewildered and wondering how on earth he did all that. Okay. Okay, Mokuba's got next watch. Bones did need some more levels in his team. But yes, we're finally fighting off this massive horde of enemies. Not too challenging, but we do eventually get some more materials for fusion. Now, we could use Chimera, but I haven't really bothered with that yet. I'll get to that in due time. But of course, it's worth noting that the fusion you get out of these two does have its oddities, and I'll eventually explain. But just how you go. So, taking on multiple opponents, of course, that was kind of a feature with Battle City, because there was the four-way match to determine who would face who. Needless to say, Kaiba was trying to take out Joey, and he wanted to be able to face Yugi. Marek was just sort of in the way for him, as it were. Marek probably wants to fight Yugi, but doesn't really care who he fights as long as he gets to kill someone. Joey probably wanted to wind up facing Marek to save Mai, and Yugi seemed to want his destined battle with Kaiba. It's an interesting setup, but the way it played out was fairly interesting as well. I think you could use monsters to intercept attacks on other characters, on other players and the like. You can't do that there, but you can't do that in most of the multi-way games I know. It was just a little bit different for the anime. Because I think it did only occur in the anime, to the best of my knowledge. I don't think they had anything like that in the manga. It was just sort of decided that that would be the case. And even then, as I said, Joey actually came damn close to beating Marek, and in the manga, the stress of everything actually makes Marek throw up. Pretty good effort, but not quite enough. Joey also didn't get his consolation third place game with Kaiba, but Kaiba just utterly kicked his ass anyway. Joey partly dueled to piss him off because he did wind up using one of the Blue Eyes White Dragons, which is the easiest way to smash Kaiba's buttons, disrespect the Blue Eyes or use it against him. Kaiba is maybe a little obsessed about the Blue Eyes White Dragon, as you can see. I mean, the guy's even got a Blue Eyes White Dragon jet, which is probably hideously impractical, even if it is pretty cool. For a given measure of cool, okay? So there we are. We have very nearly fought our way out. This will be a bit tougher first time around, but I can't remember what happens first time around. There might be something special that I have to remember. But we will get there eventually. There we are. Good levels into Bones' team. Going very well. Mokuba's next. Alrighty, so we've got a Darklands monster. That should be easy enough to take care of. I mean, Ghoul with an Appetite is done for right from the off. This is of course a lot easier with much better equipment. It's a lot harder first time around. You've got to make sure you either find the equipment or you actually have much better control over your items. Because you're really going to have to switch your teams around and wind up healing and try to stop your enemies using polymerization. Because if the fight drags on and they use polymerization, they'll tear you apart. As it stands, we're in a very, very good position. But yeah, it is kind of an interesting fight actually having to battle our way out through all these enemies. Usually that sort of some sort of sequence along the way where you get to do that foe tossing charge, throwing enemies left, right and centre as you smash your way to a valiant victory and break through the enemy ranks. There's usually something like that in the Fire Emblem games, or you're trying to escape against impossible odds. And it's interesting to note that with some of the games, at least with Thracia 776, anybody who is on the battlefield when Leaf escapes will be captured by the enemy. This is the only time this happens. Usually you just have to get everyone to escape. Thracia's game mechanics are weird. Some of them stuck around. Quite a few games actually had Fog of War chapters along the way, and they are infuriating. As I've said, in Advance Wars, usually the AI knows where you are, but in Days of Conflict, Dark Ruin, they will sort of wind up cheating in a sense. They'll deliberately scout out your units. They won't cheat by knowing where you are. They will still wind up running into your units, but they have a good knack of running into your units on purpose. Or at least accidentally on purpose. In Fire Emblem, they just ignore that and they know where you are at all times. Alright, Mokuba's got this one then. Then we can get Pegasus into fight. And Kaiba can fight the Rare Hunter. Alright, this could be a bit of a toughie, but then again we can wipe out Baphomet pretty easily. Now, we did admittedly take on Baphomet and Gazelle on their preferred territory in the previous battle. Oof. Going for polymerization right off the bat. And they get a free turn, that sucks. So, if you wouldn't mind letting me check whether Chimera's a beast or a Darklance? Because that would be kind of important. It's a beast. Dang it. Well, its HP still isn't fantastic. We can soften it up. But yeah, imagine this thing coming in the late game of a battle. You've worn the enemy down, you've nearly got them dead, and both sides are running out of AP, and then they bring out fusion. You're gone. You're basically gone, and you just have to sit there and watch Chimera take your team apart. It can be incredibly frustrating. And it's always why you've got to pay attention to things like your status effects and your enemy item use. Knowing what your enemy can do and how to counter it is pretty important in any game. I do like how Fire Emblem Awakening sort of lampshaded this with Robin's ability to see his opponent's capabilities. It was a nice way of working the tactics screen into things. Basically, you could get information on your enemies and you could plan accordingly based on some sort of supernatural strategic skill. But as it is now, we've just got to rely on softening up our enemy and smacking him down. keep him healing because then our team isn't getting hurt. Mind you, we're putting out a lot of good damage. I wonder what other abilities Millennium Golem is going to have. Whew! Very nice. We've got some criticals at just the right time. You could of course manipulate them in the early days of Pokemon, because criticals were the Pokemon's base speed stat divided by 512 times 100. So let's say you had... let's say you had 100 base speed. Your Pokemon's got about... It's got about a 20% critical chance. Which is pretty good. So something like Alakazam had close to a 1 in 4 critical chance. And that's very good indeed. But moves with a high critical hit ratio, they had speed divided by... They had base speed divided by 64 times 100, with the 255 in 256 glitch also occurring. Basically, any Pokemon with a decent enough speed stat and a move like Slash or Razor Leaf was almost always guaranteed a critical hit. You could abuse this ruthlessly. It was amazing. Oh, that's what happens.
Kaiba, I'm here to save you.
Yugi, what are you doing here?
I'll tell you later. Leave half of the enemy to me.
I don't remember asking for any help. But at least we have a chance against the enemy now. You know, the enemy that we just kind of murdered really easily. So I believe Yugi will actually wind up defeating certain enemies. At least I think that's how it goes. I can't remember. Because I've basically just sort of smacked my way through things. Oh well. Thematically speaking, yeah, Yugi will take out some enemies and give us a chance. But of course, here's the thing, we already do have an incredibly good chance. It might even be possible to wind up beating them all before Yugi does anything. Who knows, if I send a unit out to defeat... Okay, wait, hang on. Word of Spirit Stealing. Reduces attack. So I think Dark Rabbit lost 1,000 attack. Judging by the strength of my team. And since you're a spellcaster, let's get boxing. I remembered this time. And thankfully Beast King of the Swamp didn't wind up healing, or I would have looked like a right idiot. I mean, I already did that earlier on, so... Still, we're going to be doing a good amount of damage. So as far as I'm concerned, it's probably not really worth using Word of Spirit Stealing. It's good, but not great. But that's just my personal preference. I'd much rather dish out a lot of damage, but it can be handy depending on the opponent. Alright, who's going to attack next? We get our nasty jet of acid, and it will be... Parrot Dragon, who can't miss. Parrot Dragon has proven surprisingly serviceable. It does actually get pretty good stats. Some dragons really fare well, others not so much, which is a drastic departure from how the game usually goes, where dragons dominate everything. Some of the best and most devastating monsters in the entire franchise have been dragons. I mean, the Blue Eyes is one of the most powerful. The Red Eyes is incredibly versatile. There were things like the powerful dragon rulers, which pretty much broke the game and left it in several whimpering pieces. And a lot of boss monsters for various archetypes are dragons. So they get a lot of prestige. They will generally be some of the best monsters going around, but for some reason in this game they're kind of crummy. I have absolutely no idea why. Oh, they are permanently removed from the map. Wow, they're just never seen again. Mind crushed. Anything interesting here I like to check out? Okay. A few more of those. And slowly but surely, Kaiba makes his way up there, and then it will be time for him to fight Seeker. What level 1 magic is there? I really need to check that out. Anyway, Seeker actually has a fairly solid team. Well, reasonably solid anyway. But we should be able to make mincemeat of him. As night falls on the Maryah-Den plains, Swift must... Maybe it does something about movement. Like actual on the battlefield movement. I can't remember. But either way, we're about to wind up wiping out our rare hunter.
You, the little boys defying Master Scott! You should give up!
Yeah, I can't help but think of Steve the Martian, I'm sorry. Alright, let's... Wow, Dungeon Worm is of course dangerous because we are in a castle. Can't poison us yet. Wait, who's the healer? It's you. So, we'll set that onto you. And then I can power up my team. So that's 2 birds with the 1 stone. Cybersaurus is kind of a waste of space. It's really not that good. It must get a really good power-up later on in terms of stats, or it gets its AP late because it's crummy at the moment. So there we are. Swift must refer to movement over the battlefield. Because I can't really see it working any other way. It must have to be movement over the battlefield. So if you get a monster with Swift and Navy, you can wind up with reasonably quick movement, I guess. Dungeon Worm is not very happy. But we should really soften these guys up. Alright, one last defiant crack of the whip. Interestingly enough, the whip was the first human invention to break the sound barrier. That's what the crack of the whip is. the way it's designed is actually means it's actually a miniature sonic boom as the tip flicks in such a way that it winds up breaking the sound barrier because of its movement speed. It's actually really fascinating to note that. I think it was actually tested on Mythbusters, and yes, if you get it right, a good crack of the whip does indeed break the sound barrier. So it's no wonder that when Indiana Jones or anyone who uses a whip hits someone, it hurts. It hurts a lot. Wait a minute. Octoburst has got a special. Tidal wave. Create a massive tidal wave to... I didn't even notice! I'll have to remember that for next time. Only level 40 odd and it gets tidal wave. That's really, really good. Octoburster, you might be crap in the card game, but boy, you have impressed me all throughout this. Cybersaurus, on the other hand, has not. And with that terrible accuracy, it's a case of I don't think he saw us. Don't think that joke landed. Anyway, we've got some really good tricks up our sleeve. Well, we'll keep pulverizing Dungeon Worm. It's the only thing that can attack, and then we can beat the daylights out of Cybersaurus. Which is just sort of there. Dungeon Worm, when you eventually get it, will be a very good monster. It is always worth using Dungeon Worm. Poison is kind of a crappy status effect given how high HP values in this game can reach, but the extra damage is appreciated, and the fact it's Castle Adept means Dungeon Worm will hit like a truck. And there we are. And that puts paid to Sega. And we get decent levels out of it too. So we'll continue to get good level ups. Kaiba's team is going really well. And there we are.
Ah! Forgive me, please, Master Scott! No! Good. Now we've got our way out. Split up and retreat, everybody. You know where to go. We'll meet up there later.
Uh-oh, I must have gotten separated from my brother. This happens all the time. I think I know what's gonna happen.
Gee, you sound worried, Mokuba.
Ah, it's Scott!
You took good care of me when I was working at Kaiba Corp. You gave me special attention, didn't you, Mokuba? I'm also very aware of how creepy this sounds. If it hadn't been for you and your brother, I probably wouldn't be here today.
What do you mean? Ah!
You're coming with me, my little friend. And this is just a standard kidnapping. I know this is incredibly creepy, so don't get the wrong idea. You're just a bargaining chip. Oh, I hate dealing with children. An absolute nuisance.
So, Mokuba has got kidnapped again. At this rate, he probably qualifies as a Nintendo princess. Anyway, with our slightly creepy villain abducting a child, we will just have to find out what Scott has planned in the next episode. Thank you very much for joining me. Until next time, this is Red 2, returning to base.